I'm here with James Jacobson, who runs the digital mapping system on Operation IceBridge in Greenland. Thanks for joining me on this interview.
Sure, yeah, no problem.
Tell us where you grew up and where you went to high school.
Well, I grew up in a town just north of, actually just south of San Francisco called Sunnyvale, California. Um, I spent most of my childhood there, but back, let's see, around the mid '90s, family had to pick up and move to Idaho for a little bit. So I lived there for 4 years, and then came back. Actually, moved back into the same house that we had lived in
Oh my
before, and then started attending high school at Saratoga High in Saratoga, California.
And what were your interests in high school?
Well, in high school, I was mostly interested in computers were always a big thing because like computer gaming was just becoming really big around then, and also, I guess it's hard to describe, but like various forms of like technology, I guess, but not in like the super nerdy way. Like I joined the theater technical crew in high school because they did a lot of like set building and doing sort of interesting and unique things with base material stuff that just wood and nails and stuff, but making these big sets that could move and do all this kind of stuff. So I was always really interested in doing interesting things with materials that were easy to get.
And did growing up in Silicon Valley have some influence?
I think so. I mean, my dad was he was an entrepreneur in the Silicon Valley, and so he and a lot of his friends, they were engineers, and always talking about the stuff that they do and things that they would make. I'm pretty sure a lot of that rubbed off on me too.
Where did you go to college, and what did you major in there?
Well, I did my undergraduate work at UC Santa Barbara. I graduated with a BS in geology and earth science, with a emphasis in hydrology and engineering geology, which is a bit long-winded, but that's what it was.
Good and nerdy.
Yeah, very good and nerdy. If you want to learn about rocks and water and all that stuff, it's a great place to go. After college, I spent about 2 years as a groundwater monitoring technician and a staff geologist, working with environmental consulting firms in like the Los Angeles County area. And a lot of that was we would go out to places with like contaminated groundwater. A lot of times these were old oil refineries or old gas stations that had like underground storage tank leaks, and our companies would be hired to figure out how do we clean up this mess, what do we do to make it right, and so did that for a couple of years, and then decided to retrain, go back to school, get my master's degree, and this was after a conversation that I had with one of my coworkers. I'd asked him, so what'd you do for school, kind of like you're doing with me now, and he was like, oh, when I got started, I actually got a degree in remote sensing, and I was like, what the heck is that? And the more he talked about it, the cooler it seemed. It sort of took a lot of the stuff that I already knew about from earth science, but from the angle of how do we use the technology that we have to look at these problems in a different way, like, satellite or radar or laser ranging or ground penetrating radar. Like when he started talking about all this stuff, I got really fascinated, and I was like, this seems like a good idea for me. This seems like something I want to do.
And then what did you do?
I applied to graduate school, even though I didn't necessarily have the best grades coming out of UC Santa Barbara, but I applied to graduate school at UC Santa Cruz, and basically over a conversation with Coffee, the man who would become my graduate advisor, he accepted me into his program.
Wow.
Great.
Yeah.
Eli Silver, he's a great guy.
Good. I hope he sees this.
Yeah, I hope so too.
So after you graduated with that degree, what was your path to NASA?
Well, let's see. I'd actually had an internship at NASA before I had gone down to Santa Barbara.
Okay.
I was working this is another long-winded title, but as a hypergravity engineering technician. So basically, NASA Ames has a number of high-powered centrifuges on site. As a matter of fact, one of them is like the largest in the world. It's the 20G centrifuge.
Wow.
And so I worked on a team of people who helped facilitate researchers. Like, we need to set up this experiment. These are the things we need to do it. So go and build it for us. And so we would, I worked in a small machine shop, and you know, we would make swing arms and things that folded out of walls and all. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And it was honestly one of the most fun jobs I'd ever had. So I knew, or at least I had an intuitive feeling that I wanted to end up back at NASA somehow, someday. I didn't really know how it was going to happen though.
Yeah.
But after I'd finished my master's degree, I got a job working for the Carnegie Institution for Science, and working with a brilliant man named Greg Asner, who does a lot of ecology research in the humid tropics. And so what I did for about the next 4 years was I was flying on small aircraft with a suite of sensors that the Carnegie folks lovingly call the Carnegie Airborne Observatory.
Mm-hmm.
And we were mapping rainforest. We were flying over Hawaii, the Amazon, South Africa, Central America. You know, we were going all over the place, and we were basically trying to answer the question, how much carbon is locked up in these rainforests? Mm-hmm. Like, if these trees disappeared, how much carbon would be released into the atmosphere? Mm-hmm. Which, of course, has huge implications for, you know, climate change.
Right.
So, after about 4 years, things were changing. A lot of stuff was happening, and I ended up talking to Eli Silver, my old graduate researcher, my graduate advisor again. And you know, I'd sort of thrown out the question, like, so, do you know anything that's going on in the field right now? He's like, actually, you should talk to Jeff Myers over at NASA Ames and see if he's got anything. And I did, and Jeff was very excited to talk to me, and things kind of snowballed from there, and I ended up back at NASA Ames, right where I wanted to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now, what's your favorite part of being back at NASA and working on Operation IceBridge?
Well, I would have to say my favorite part is that you get to work with a lot of interesting people, a lot of really smart people, and that sort of, I think, causes you to step up your game a little bit. You know, mm-hmm. Like it's very easy to get into a job where you show up and you do the same thing every day and you sort of become complacent about it. Mm-hmm. But when you're constantly surrounded by people who are challenging you, you sort of rise to the challenge. Mm-hmm. And I think even people who aren't interested in that aspect of their job, they're affected by it. You know, and I think that's probably the best thing. I mean, you know, we fly all over the world doing all this interesting work, and we get to, you know, meet and interact with all these really smart, interesting people.
And would it be fair to say that science and engineering has literally taken you around the world?
I think that, yes. There are currently 3 continents I have not been to in the last 6 years, which are Asia, Australia, and Antarctica, though the last one may be changing soon.
Right. Right. And what advice do you have for someone in high school that would want to follow in your footsteps?
The best advice I think I can give would be to definitely stay on track with math, because even though you're not really sure if you're going to need it, it's a big deal. Also, I guess I would say, you know, computers are really dominating this thing. Mm-hmm. As time goes on, you know, it's only going to be more important. And that's, I would say, one thing that I've always felt more deficient in than anything else is being able to program, like to create my own programs and to do my own thing. You have to think of it like a tool. Like, it's hard to do things. It's hard to screw in, you know, a wall plate or something if you don't have a screwdriver, mm-hmm. right? So, I would say math programming would be the things that I would tell my younger self to do.
Good. And so thanks a lot for joining me on this interview.
Well, thank you very much. It was nice talking to you.
Thanks.